I have learned that the future is slowly creeping up on us through intervals of instances, while we are distracted by the belief that it is further than the very next moment. We cast ourselves so far into tomorrow that we speed past today without living it. We treat the present moment like a portal into our daydreams, and we are always rushing somewhere, looking for a quick fix, rushing through every pulse of our heartbeats that we don't even catch the rhythm to which our hearts beat. We are constantly seeking for a way out, reaching towards a different realm in which we won't have to be who we are right now. We chant procrastination mantras about unborn destinies. We obsess over these fantasies that we miss our reality. A man in a song once sang that time waits for no man. This poem here chimes into that gospel that time is man's invention, an absurd effort to measure eternity, to try and see just how much capacity the universe occupies, a foolish attempt to figure out how old God must be. We are really that bold. We have placed ourselves in the authority over everything, that we think we can compel timelessness into divisions of our own understanding, thinking that we can count the portions that make up abundance. We forget that the future is coming regardless of our disposition, for it has the habit of disguising itself as a far-off dream that is out of reach, while it delicately unfolds right under our noses, disregarded. And when it has long become the past, we wonder when it passed us by. For we placed our concern so far from where it was required that we missed the show. And what follows is that constant need to revise our history. We chant reminiscent mantras about dead and buried yesterdays. We obsess over these memories that once again we miss our reality. My name is Notolo Desire. I come from Monstolros in Limpopo, and I currently reside in Pretoria. I grew up in Monstolros all my life, and my upbringing was led by two Ndebele parents. Both my parents are Ndebele, and they're very cultured. So there was a lot of influence from my Ndebele culture in my upbringing. Also, the environment that I grew up in, my hood, Mosolros, is something between a suburb and a kasi. So there's both the disadvantages and the advantages, but it was pretty simple. I had a childhood that it doesn't have anything extra to it other than I was a kid that played. I was learning a lot. I was curious, and I was a writer. I learned that I do a lot in writing. I place my thoughts in writing. That's how I discovered that I am a poet, especially when I started sharing what I had written with other people. Somebody else told me that it was poetry, but all along it was just me expressing myself. And I write a lot about how I was raised and the people that I used to see when I was growing up. The kind of life that is led where people wake up in the morning and they have routines to how they do things. They have a community that is pretty much linked together. The people back at home, they're in each other's business in some way, but in a best way, because they are of help to each other, they love each other, and they care for one another. So I come from a group of people that deeply immerse themselves in the culture of Ubuntu, and they also hold on to the roots that we come from. So my upbringing was mostly influenced by that. My biggest challenge is the economics of poetry. All of us as artists go through a phase where we try to find our voice or find our art and our style. But in some art forms, there comes a breaking point where after you have found your balance, there might be a way of sustaining yourself with your art. If you're a musician, you can get to a point where you can live off making music. If you're a writer, if you are a painter. But in poetry, it's very limited. I know a lot of poets who do poetry as something to pass time or something that is part-time because of the economics of poetry. Poetry is not even an industry, it's a community, especially here in Pretoria. I mean, in South Africa, actually. There are organizations who try to close that gap, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So, as an individual in poetry, I would say the economics are the challenge, making life off of poetry. So, when you're a poet, you have to learn other things that are going to be able to put food on the table, keep the lights on, apart from poetry. You cannot truly make a career solely from writing poetry unless you are one of those chosen people. And trust me, there are some people who are very chosen, and it might have to do with luck and chance and certain environments that one occupies, but it's not many who are able to thrive financially off of poetry. My advice to poets that are trying to find their voice, trying to write as true as they can, is to get to know themselves, get to know what they are about, and to learn how to write as much as possible, to read and allow themselves to be taught. One thing that I know in poetry is that there tends to be a lot of people who want to define what poetry is according to what they know, according to what they have learned. But at the end of the day, poetry is art, and it's always unique to the person creating it. So it would be good for a person who's trying to find their voice to know themselves. It would be good to know what is true to them, to write as honestly as they can, regardless of whether somebody has written about whatever it is that they're writing about, regardless of whether it's a style that is not common that they are writing in. Remember that creative energy does not manifest itself the same way through every person. And you, as a writer and as a poet, you are the one who can design what you produce. You are the one who gets to say how your writing will go, what your voice will sound like. And your intuition, the creative energy that is flowing through you, is the same energy that is your intuition. It will always be honest with you, as long as you are being honest with yourself and you are truly listening to yourself. That's what I would advise you to do. The structures of poetry, the ways that a language is written, that is just something that you can learn along the way. You can read, you can take a course, you can find a mentor, but the basis of it, the core of everything, is that you be true to yourself and know yourself. That's it.